I will allow Senator Tuberville to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks both for being here. We can obviously tell by all the young people in here, and even my two boys at home, they really got into this past election because of food safety and health, because most of our kids are a lot more into health and nutrition than we were growing up, and it's really gotten out of control. So I want to ask you about Red 3 and Red 40, both of you, and get your comments on this. It's not a conservative or a liberal standpoint. I think we all need to understand as a group about how we've gotten to this point. The FDA has a position that food colorings like 40 are safe for kids' ingestion. Do both of you stand behind that, Dr. Caleb?
I'm going to refer that to Mr. Jones.
Okay.
We have not evaluated Red 40 in over a decade. Over a decade ago,
We have not.
We have not. At FDA, we have not evaluated the safety of Red 40 in over a decade. So over a decade, that was the conclusion that FDA made.
But we have evaluated. We are in the process of evaluating Red 3, and you may want to comment on that.
Well,
right.
let me say this. Red 3 has been known to cause cancer in cosmetics, but we still allow it to be put in our food. I don't understand that. Go ahead.
So Red 3, we have a petition in front of us to revoke the authorization for it, and we are hopeful that within the next few weeks we will be acting on that petition, and a decision should be forthcoming.
Tell us that process. How does that work? The timeline, if we know something's deadly for anybody that ingests it, how do we continue to just study that and not say, hey, enough's enough?
So Red 3 presents an interesting example for us. It is actually known to be cancer in laboratory animals, rats, but the scientific consensus is that the mechanism of carcinogenicity in rats is not applicable in humans. However, under the FFDCA, which is the law that we implement, any chemical that is shown to be carcinogenic in animals or humans, or should I say humans or animals, cannot be authorized by FDA. It's called the Delaney Clause. And so even though we don't believe there is a risk to humans under the Delaney Clause of the FFDCA, red dye, because it is known to cause cancer in laboratory animals, should not be authorized. And so that is what has been challenged FDA for many years, is how to manage around the Delaney Clause, where you have a scenario where, although there may be cancer evidence in animals, there is also evidence that is not harmful to humans.
I hope the FDA feels a responsibility to humans. Dr. Caleb, you've probably heard quite a bit about this for the last 4 years that you've been serving us. Has this been a priority? Because we hear it, constantly about the dyes. I mean, dyes are just coloring. It has nothing to do with the taste or anything like that.
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, it is a priority, and I want to point out, listen carefully to what Mr. Jones said. We don't have data in humans that number 3 causes cancer, but we have it in laboratory animals. And so this gets complicated. And I want to remind you of what it takes to demonstrate that a substance that people eat causes cancer. You have to study a large number of people over a long period of time, because if something caused cancer right away, it would be obvious. But in these cases, you need something different. And I want to point out, we have a very small staff that can do this based on the budget. We have repeatedly asked for better funding for chemical safety. I brought Mr. Jones in to head the Human Foods Program because of his history of working on environmental issues. I think it is a huge priority. He's an expert in this. Please look at our requests for funding for the people who do this work. Remember that when we do ban something, it will go to court. And if we don't have the scientific evidence that will stand up in court, we will lose in court.
Okay, I want to ask you this, and I think everybody in here wants to hear the answer to this question. We all hear Europe uses different dyes because they've come up with their evaluation that it does cause problems for humans. Do we have a different review system than they do about food dyes or anything put in food?
The biggest distinction between the U.S. and Europe is that they have been doing post-market review of chemicals now for over 20 years. In the FDA, although we have authorization to do post-market reviews. There's no statutory mandate to do them. One of the things that Dr. Califf mentioned is that as part of this reorganization, we are dedicating an entire office whose job is to do post-market chemical reviews. So, but we are several decades behind Europeans and our Canadian counterparts because they have legal mandates to reevaluate chemicals that have been authorized at some point in the past. We don't, but we are going to undertake it. We are going to definitely struggle with the resources necessary to do that.
There's a real lesson here from, I don't know if you eat Fruit Loops. I grew up every once in a while eating Fruit Loops. But there's a real lesson here, and I haven't verified this myself, but it's widely written, that when the dyes that make Fruit Loops bright were taken out for the reasons that you give, the sales went straight down, and they were put back in. So as long as we have a consumer-driven system where what people like in the short term is what drives the system, unless we have help from you all, that is clear direction from Congress, particularly given the recent Supreme Court decisions, it's going to be really hard for us to mandate things come off. Okay. Just a point I'm going to make over and over, and I apologize, but I think it's really important that we work together on this.
Thank you for your points.